deviate here a little bit. For the last 15 minutes, our newsroom has been trying to confirm some information we're learning about Governor Walz. We have now contacted Fox 9 political analyst Bloise Olson, reporting Governor Tim Walz will likely drop out of the governor's race. I believe I have Bloise now.
I guess all this
call.
Somali fraud is
Hi,
just
Bloise.
catching up to him.
Hey, Randy, how are you? Happy Sunday night.
Good.
And I've only seen this story on one outlet. I've looked all over. I've been trying to look for more videos.
A few minutes ago, but tell us what you know about the possibility of the governor now dropping out of the governor's race for re-election.
So I think we've heard for many days that there was a lot of pressure from Democrats on Governor Walz whether or not he was going to stay in this race. But I learned late today that he met with Senator Amy Klobuchar today. And tomorrow his schedule is an all-staff meeting and then some media briefings. They have not put out his public...
He's going to tell the staff, hey, it's over.
Schedule
need
yet
to start
for
looking
tomorrow,
for different
but
jobs.
my sources are telling me that he will make a major announcement
so
tomorrow and that it is likely that he'll drop out of the governor's race.
Information.
Bloise, again, the first thing people will think about is, okay, where does this leave the Democratic Party in the race for governor? Because it was fairly cut and dry prior to the last few weeks, we might say, when all the fraud stuff broke and the governor announced last fall he would be running for re-election. Where does this leave? I know Peggy Flanagan, the lieutenant governor, is running for Senate. Where does it leave that party if they're going to try and replace him on the gubernatorial ticket?
Well, I think that's why the decision had to be made sooner rather than later. February 3rd is the precinct caucuses for the DFL, and any candidate who wants to seek the endorsement is going to have to go through that process.
It's going to be Somali.
Amy Klobuchar has been rumored to be interested and maybe could run. She would also not have to give up her Senate seat if she ran, because the Senate race that's on the ballot is Tina Smith's seat. But then the other names that come to mind are Secretary of State Steve Simon, and then you have that competitive Senate race between Lieutenant Governor Flanagan and Representative Angie Craig. I think there'll be some other names that emerge in the weeks.
It's going to be a Democrat, I can tell you that.
I think everybody's waiting to see if Klobuchar jumps in.
So is this, let's look at this from a political perspective, and let's look at it from the other side of the aisle, from a Republican standpoint. Does this open a fairly large door that maybe the Republicans running for governor haven't seen before without Walz in the race?
Well, we haven't seen an open governor's race since 2018. We saw one in 2010. Open governor's races are very different. They're very expensive. And they become very crowded.
A lot of that Democratic funding is going to get spread all over.
This will change the dynamic.
It's just going to not.
Privately, Republicans had been hoping that Walz would stay in the race because they saw him as very vulnerable, seeking his third term with some of this fraud stories just continuing to linger and not go away.
That's interesting. Do you see
this is the perfect time before the midterms to drop out?
Expertise and your opinions, and having watched Minnesota politics for as many decades as I have, does this create a better chance for a Republican to win? And you do duly noted that they thought Governor Walz was more beatable than some other likely candidate. Is it your view then that the Democrats will put a high-profile Democrat on the ticket?
I think what you have to consider here, Randy, is what we've seen nationally for Democrats, and we're seeing it in the Senate race here. There is friction in the Democratic Party between progressives and center-right, more pro-business Democrats. You saw it in New York with the Mondami election. You're seeing it in the Flanagan race against Angie Craig.
So expect more socialists.
Minneapolis
There's going to be a socialist.
And so what we're going to see here is more progressive candidates are going to look to the caucus system, and a more moderate candidate's going to think, can they win in a primary? Let's remember that Governor Dayton and Governor Walz both won primaries to be governor. And so the endorsed candidate did not succeed there.
All right, I want to get to you about the whys and the what-fors on this. A couple things come to mind very quickly. One, a failed vice presidential run. There was a lot of scrutiny put on Governor Walz during that, his behavior, his demeanor, what kind of person was he? Those of us in Minnesota watched that very closely. That certainly became a bit of a drag for him politically.
They want to run her again,
now
but they're probably
we're
going to
put
Newsom in
the
there.
fraud that is being investigated here in Minnesota with state oversight and now federal oversight. Which of those things or combination of those things, Bloise, in your view, would be what would force Governor Walz to not run again? What's your take on that?
Randy, I really do think it's the fraud. The idea that the fraud story is not going away. We're going to have more indictments, and the headlines are just going to continue.
And it's spreading to Boston and Columbus and Washington and California.
They don't believe he seized the issue early enough, that he didn't take it seriously early enough. And now we look at the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
He's like the face of it.
And the federal government really coming down on Minnesota.
Get away with it.
I wrote last year what to watch in 2025 was how Governor Walz re-entered Minnesota. And I think it took him a while to get his feet back under him after his VP run, but I think he found his way, and overall his approval ratings were, in the mid-40s, solid for a second-term governor in a divided state. So I feel like he caught his feet after the VP run, but this is something that I don't think that he thinks he can recover from. I also
What's next,
believe,
though, What's next
in my heart that the tenor and tone is exhausting.
Start a podcast.
Seeking a third term, being on the national stage, the tenor tone of politics, losing Speaker Emeritus Hortman, going through just the tragedy of Annunciation, that's got to wear on just the human soul. And how much energy would he have for a third term, especially if the pressure of Washington and further kind of polarization and heightened threats to him, continue.
All right, one final question on this, and that would be, in your view, again, some of this we're speaking hypothetically because officially the governor has not said he won't be running for re-election. I trust your sources as you do, so it's very likely we will hear more about this tomorrow. Again, to remind our viewers, the governor has called an 11 a.m. news conference.
When you call a fucking news conference,
and we will carry that, by the way, on Fox 9 and Fox Local.
You either got some charges.
The final question I have on this, because of the national stage that the governor was thrust upon during that election run, do you think he received pressure from the National Democratic Party that he was becoming a drag nationally on the ticket, or is this confined to Minnesota only?
No, I do think there's some national, weights around him running again. But I don't think they were not. They could overcome. National Democrats, I think, would have rallied. But they're going to look at indicators like fundraising, like donor support. I talked to several Democratic elected officials in the last few days, and they really had started to feel that he was going to drag down the Minnesota ticket, and that would be first and foremost.
He's going to drag down.
Boys, as always, we appreciate your insight and your sourcing. And we will talk with you more tomorrow, undoubtedly, about this as we learn more about it. Again, just to recap for our viewers who may have been listening, Blaze joined us to talk about what he is hearing through his sourcing, that Governor Tim Walz will not, in fact, run for re-election. Again, we're expected to learn more tomorrow if, in fact, this all comes to fruition.
It's coming, man.
At an 11 a.m. news conference. Again, thank you, Blaze, for that. In the meantime.
So, yeah, that's it, guys. Curtains for Tim. Definitely, the Somali shit had a lot to do with it, for sure. And, it's just like the LA wildfires, like that Somali stuff started small. Nick Shirley just engulfed it. Now it's all over the country now. All these reporters who are YouTube reporters who are coming up are out here trying to catch all the Somali. They're going to be going through all the Somali daycares and just, this is going to get crazy. We used to always be worried about like news stations doing this kind of stuff, but now we have like citizen reporters, which you can get like 20 or 30 of those per one reporter, or maybe 100 of those per one reporter, and they can get out there and cover some crazy stuff, and compile some crazy stuff. But that's one of the joys of YouTube and one of the cool things about freedom of speech. So don't feel bad for them. Some people, usually retire in the top of their game, and he's not. He's just not. So, I don't know what to even say about it besides good riddance, Tim. And, I'd like to see what's next because it's going to be a failure, whatever it is, and I'll be documenting it because I don't like Tim Walz. I'm going to have to take his fat ass out of my outro that's coming up right now.